Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dargon Gaming Squad. This is Chris and
Sorry about that. I had to get the mute button. And Nate.
and tonight we have a special guest, Jackson Johnson, and we're going to talk about the Cypher System. Would you like to introduce yourself, Jackson?
I would love to. Hello everyone. My name is Jackson Johnson. I am just starting my new YouTube channel called Creative Storm Gaming. It just got kicked off the ground, and I currently only have one video where I played a bit of Cypher System with with Chris and a couple other good friends, and I am happy to be here to talk about Cypher System and anything else that Chris may want to ask me. I cannot guarantee I am knowledgeable about anything else though, but we shall see.
That's fair. That's fair. You're in the company of a couple other fairly newish GMs as well. So, yeah. So, let's just start with. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your gaming background and how you got into Cypher System?
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, I started gaming at around right about when I entered high school, so around 2012, 2013. And it was introduced to me by a friend of mine who I would often like write like crappy little like scripts on the side with him when it was my only creative outlet that I knew because I had no idea about gaming beforehand. And we just jumped. He just showed me Dungeons and Dragons 3.5 actually, and I fell in love. I was hooked from the start, as everyone else has been, and I've just been playing till my heart can't take it. I have just been I've been I am Some would say I'm addicted, some would say this is a problem. I would say nay. This is a life. So, yes, that's basically the history. I started in 3.5. I played a lot of Pathfinder. I was definitely a Pathfinder guy, and I was one of the people who was a bit resistant to when 5th edition came out because I was like, oh well, it can't be as good as Pathfinder, right? But then when I finally played 5e, and I was like, oh wait, this is way easier as a DM. And from there, I went on, and I found that my style more acclimates to a more narrative focused, simplistic version of role playing games, which also in turn led me to Cypher System.
Awesome. Awesome. So how long have you been GMing? Did you kind of jump into GMing right from the start, or did you,
I
start as a player and ease into it like I'm doing?
Oh yeah, I definitely started as a player. In a very it was a very more goofy minded game. We were all a bunch of like monstrous races who were like traveling from town to town. Just there was no plot. We were just like making stuff up. It was just a whole lot of fun. It wasn't until that I actually was given the opportunity to GM by a couple of my friends because they were just like, we're all taking turns. It's your turn, buddy. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize that was what you guys were doing. So I I stressed out for about a good 17 hours until like I started to come up with some stories, and I realized like how the potential of this game could be more than just a couple of guys hanging out having fun. It could be storytelling and sharing an experience that is unlike any like movie or TV. And that's really when I dived into GMing, and after that, I've actually become like a primarily a GM in my career. I'm proud to say I've introduced tons of people to the hobby through just saying I'll run a game for you. It helps being a GM by trade because when people want to play the game but no one really wants to run it, so it's helpful for me to just jump and say I'll run something for you guys, and that's just where I've been. I've GM'd most of my gaming career at this point. Yeah.
You get them hooked that way. It's so easy. I can imagine what could happen if somebody had a really bad first running experience. They were the person who just like my Deadlands game the other day where I just, everybody's been super nice about it, but it just didn't feel good. And I think if that had been my first GMing experience, I don't know if I'd ever run again, but luckily it wasn't.
I can tell you my first GM experience was horrible. It was awful. It was at a Halloween party at like midnight. It was three guys. They were all hooped up on a bunch of, soda and candy, and one of them just passed out halfway through the game, and so someone had to take over for his character. Another guy was just being a smartass with me and kept like making the NPCs that I made, who were hiring them to like go into these sewers, to like make them pay him more than I wanted to. And then when we finally like got in there, they fought like a giant centipede that like, kicked their butt. And I was like, and they were complaining about dying, and I was looking at the stats, and I'm like, well, it says here by the stats, and I realized I was reading I thought I was reading a giant centipede stat block, but I was reading right next to it, which was a centipede swarm stat block, which was like 3 CRs higher than what was intended for the party. So at that point, we just gave up and redid the game, and they just fought a bunch of ogres, and that sort of salvaged it. But yeah, first time GMing is always a wonderful, horrible mess.
Always something. Oh my gosh. Well, I applaud that you didn't give up then, because I don't know. I don't know. I was lucky though. I had really good players in that game, and so far, all the games I've run have been, good players and patient people.
That's very similar to my first experience with D&D, though. Starting off just as a story, and then growing more into like, oh, hey, they actually have games like this. People have thought about playing things like this. So, although I don't remember my first GMing experience, probably because it started off first as story, as kind of yours did a little bit. So it was more or less just I had a lot of practice telling story before I actually had to deal with telling an actual D&D hoopty.
Yeah, stats and dice and all that.
Yeah,
the logistics.
Yeah, I come from an artistic background, and it kind of helps like being an artist, whether that be like writer or performer or anything else in the artistic world, that kind of allows you to tell stories, and then you go into like role-playing games and you understand, oh wait, this is just kind of like a organized improv in a way. And then like every actor friend I've introduced to this game, when that clicked for them, they just were off to the races, and they just made like the most fantastic and outlandish characters. And there was no fear, because you're just making this crap up, and it's all fun.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Yeah, I think when the light bulb kind of went on for me of like, okay, I don't have to wait for this person to tell me what I'm allowed to do. I can just say, this is what I want to do, and they can figure it out. That's helped so much, but it took me a while to get there. I've kind of only just gotten there recently.
Yeah. I remember the first time
Oh
no, I'm sorry. Well, I was just saying, I remember the first time that when it clicked for me was, I played like, Dragon Age, Origins, and Skyrim up to that point. And what hit me was the fact that it was all in our heads, so we could do anything. And then when that clicked for me, I was like, wait, I could just stab this guy talking to me right now. And the DM was like, you could? And I was just like, oh, I can do anything. And shenanigans ensued. But I'm so sorry for interrupting. What were you gonna say?
That's totally okay. So I was gonna ask then. So Cypher System, tell us about that. How did you pick it, I guess, as the system to run for that game?
Well, for me, I watch a YouTube channel called WebDM. I don't know if you guys have ever checked them out, but they're a really great D&D advice show, especially for GMs, just giving advice on how to play with monsters, how to do certain storylines or stats. And they had an episode about Cipher, and they went into all of it. And basically, Cypher System, now that I'll get into the meat of it, is a system that was developed by Monty Cook Games for their flagship title, Numenera. It was a new RPG that I think came out in 2013, but don't quote me on that. And it eventually, it proved a successful system, and down the line, it developed into the more generic Cypher System that we played with. And what made me interested by the Cypher System rather than Numenera was the fact that it was a broad system but it still had that crunch that didn't make it feel all whimsy, you know?
Yeah.
Like there were certain paths you took. There were restrictions you had that restrained you enough to give some it gives weight, you know? It gives weight to your characters and what they can do. I think there's a certain satisfaction people get out of having like special abilities that give them bonuses or disadvantage or give their enemies disadvantages on certain things that you can't really do in more like abstract role-playing games. And it seemed to me that Cipher, and I can get into the details of the system like later on, but it seemed to me that Cipher combined to me what I was looking for in something that could be crunchy, but you could adapt it to whatever you want. So you could run a Cypher System game in, sci-fi or, a fantasy game that would be different from Dungeons and Dragons, a modern game, a horror game, whatever you want, or in our case, a bunch of pixies fighting off evil rats, which was a lot of fun. And I want to thank you, Chris, for adding to the hilarious and whimsical nature that was that game.
Well, thank you again for having me, because that was just, oh my gosh, it was so much fun. It was something so different, right? And that kind of makes me wonder, as far as like the pixie thing went, you had to come up with that on your own. That wasn't a module that you found somewhere then, right? You had to figure that all out on your own. How did you?
I figured it out on my own, going off the Cypher System, because for me, what Cypher System is, it's a chance for me to explore stories that you couldn't tell in Dungeons and Dragons, you know? I mean, I probably could have done it with 5th edition if I had just like, made a pixie class, but I wanted to do something that was really different from D&D, and I felt like what you guys got was something that was perfectly suitable. And for me, creating that game was easy. I can say this now. I had a sheet of paper that had the story, the characters, and the basic numbers of the enemies. And the big thing for me about Cypher System, which made it really easy, was I can assign difficulty of anything based on a scale of 1 to 10.
Wow, that's it.
Yeah. That's it. It's literally, I mean, there's a little bit more minutia of why that is, but the basic premise is like any skill roll, any attack, any defense is all determined by a difficulty of 1 to 10. And Cypher System uses this system where you have a d20, you roll it, and it's on a scale of 1 to 10 where you multiply the difficulty number. So say if you were doing a difficulty 3 task, so it would be multiplied by 3. So 3 times 3, 9. And you have to roll on a d20, and if you get a 9 or above, you succeed in that task. And it goes on and on and on. And you'll notice that, you can't get a 30 or a 21 or above on a d20, and there are often numbers where if you do 3 times 10, you'll get a 30. So the other part of Cypher System that you found out was it's all about using your abilities to lower the difficulty. It isn't so much about gaining a bonus to beat the difficulty, but so much as lowering the difficulty number by 1, subsequently by 3 each step.
Wow. Okay. Oh my gosh. And so when it comes to like creating the rats, for instance, all you had to do is figure out how difficult it is to hit them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I literally was like, yeah, for the rats, I was just like, these are easy, like, these are like the Ultron robot clones in Avengers where you can just smack them aside in droves and it's easy. So I gave them like a difficulty of 2. So you had to get a 6 or above.
6, right. Oh, man.
And you could, yeah, and it was literally just like, you had to beat those difficulties. And another thing about Cypher System, which is really cool, is the DM does none of the rolling, And you guys had to roll defense and also have to beat the same number that you were trying to beat when you were hitting them. So when the rats attacked you, it was you having to roll a defense of a 6 or above.
Oh my gosh. That's so simple.
It is. And I didn't believe it at first. I will admit, I was kind of like, really? This is it? But I mean, we ran it, and sure, it wasn't perfect, I will admit, and I made up a lot of stuff on the spot. But the great thing about Cypher System is they literally, like, in the rules are saying, this is a very broad system. We're not trying to define everything for you, unlike, say, you know, Pathfinder, where there is, like, literally, like, feet trees you'll find. And that's nothing against Pathfinder. I love Pathfinder. I was born and bred on Pathfinder. But there is just a simplicity that Cypher System allows where they say, just make it up.
So
We've
a
literally
question.
made a... Oh, yeah.
Sorry, a question concerning the Cypher System. So does it? How does the leveling or progression in skill and or just like time play out then? So does that mean that as you get stronger, will that 10 difficulty always stay a 10 difficulty for you, or will soon like 10s become a little bit easier to handle?
Well, the way it works in leveling up is you basically earn XP through, like, not through combat, but through, like, story moments or intrusions where,
So it's milestone, kind of.
yeah, milestone. It's milestone, and also there's also times where the DM was, where I or a GM would just be particularly impressed by something that happened, and they'll give you a point of experience, or these fun things called intrusions, which I love. And Chris, I think you know why I love them, because it basically is the DM's golden ticket to mess with the player. Like, I think I can't remember, in a fight where you guys were like flying on the backs of these like blind bats. There were moments where I just intruded and said, you drop a weapon or you lose this thing, and in that moment, I give you some experience points. I give that player who got intruded on 1 point of experience, and then I gave them 2 points of experience. That player got to keep the 1 and give the other point to another player. So it encourages. It's a system that encourages players to, you know, be active and be into the story too, because it's all about impressing each other, not just the GM. It's all about the other player going, I'm liking what this guy's doing, or I feel like you could use this XP, and you give it to them. I ramble a lot, but I'm getting to your question, I promise. The way leveling up works is you eventually acquire enough experience points, usually about, I think it was 4. And then when you get those 4, you acquire a milestone. There's a specific thing of what it's called, but I can't remember it off the top of my head, where there are 4 different requirements you need to fill. And when you get 4 XP, you fulfill one of those 4 requirements. Like, say, you get another skill, or your dice pool goes up in one of your 3 pools, and so on and so forth. And when all of those 4 are filled, that's when you level up to the next tier.
Okay.
Cypher System is measured in a system of tiers. It goes up to 6 tiers, I believe. It's a very long progression, and it's meant to be. It's meant to be more that you are skilled and you are powerful as you are, even like at first tier. But as you level up, the system grants you more abilities. So, in answering your question about does the D10 get less difficult, it can, because your abilities allow you to further lower the difficulty class of each, you know, encounter. And in doing that, with your abilities, it's easier to do harder things. So that's why you level up.
Yeah.
Wow, I just explained the basics of what leveling up is, but yeah.
Beautifully done.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, that's. I hope you can understand that through that rambling. That was.
I got that. So then, since you did play a more rigorous system, do you think it still retains a lot of the I don't want to say replayability, but the retention that you would expect from Pathfinder? So I know like Pathfinder is one of those ones that's really hard to get into, but once you get into a character and you start collecting those skills, it becomes an addiction, and it's almost like a drug. versus what I find like a lot of these kind of very vapid gaming systems, even game like computer games, you'll see a lot of times will just people lose interest because they're just so easy and light on the rules. Like, do you think that Cypher can kind of compare to something very crunchy?
I would say it goes back to my point on, like, I think the Cypher system has just the right amount of crunch, because what it does is it's based off of you build your characters off of these three basic things in a sentence. I'm an adjective, noun, who verbs, and the adjective describes one part of yourself, the noun describes another part of yourself, and the verb describes another part of yourself. And those three things have, like, there are multiple different versions of what those things are. Like, I am a tough expert who bears a halo of fire, excuse me. So I'm very durable, I'm tough, I'm an expert, so I'm really smart and I'm a good tactician, and I can work well with, like, magic or technology. And bears a halo of fire means I have fire spells, essentially. That's one example of hundreds. And the great thing is, all of those different combinations, each of them have their own leveling system. So there is actually, like, plenty of crunch inside the system, but they are very broadly worded and use very broad language, so you can plug them into whatever system you want. So there is a leveling system. There is a way of combining skills and abilities to make a unique character, and it's broad enough, in my opinion, to where you can create a vastly different character. I mean, you and a couple other players could have, like, the same. You could also be tough. You could all be tough characters, but some of you could be, like, has lightning powers, or can read minds, or can possess the bodies of animals. But you still have that tough thing, and it just branches out, and it's very far-reaching. And I think it has that right amount of crunch. It is definitely something you can dive into and just peek through, and it's more about, like, it's kind of like a shotgun approach. You fire the shotgun, you spread it out, and you see all the different kind of fun patterns and combinations you can make. I think it's really cool.
It was a neat way to conceive of a character. It was a little. I have a hard time doing that. I have a tendency to go, I'm going to play this, I'm going to play, an elf, and I'm going to be, whatever. But doing it that way made it so much easier than to go through and go, okay, yeah, this is a skill I want, or, this is it. I thought that ended up being easier in the long run.
Yeah.
And I know one of the things that I'm thinking about every time I'm looking at a new system is sometimes I'm very often, like, looking for those systems that if you say you had a player down on a game night with a home group, you could just sit down and go, let's create some characters and run something. And that game felt like that was doable. It was a little harder for me because we had the distance thing.
Yeah.
And so I know I 20 questioned you to Kingdom Come, but
you were fine.
It was like, but I think, to sit down with a group when somebody has the book right there, you could probably really quickly, put something together, and somebody who's a good storyteller like you or Nate could just, throw something in there. The other thing that was really cool for me is, so I asked Jackson, what time period are we playing in? And he's like, oh, we're modern day, but you guys are out in the woods. You're removed from the city and all that. And so I was like, well, can I have bombs of some sort? and it, like, sure, here's some ideas. And so I had those little mushroom bombs, and that was super fun.
Yeah.
It was fun to say, use your imagination to come up with something. And
yeah, we just made these fun little mushroom bombs, and the great thing about the system was I could just assign what kind of damage they do, and it worked out. And going on what you were saying about, like, just sitting down in person, the system is meant to be very fast to pick up. And in regards to the character creation of I am a blank blank who blanks, it can be very fun, especially for just getting into a system, because it can inform what kind of character you want to play. So if I am a quick-witted explorer who discovers the unseen or whatever, that can just it's a very like it kind of pulls from like Pulp Fiction, like Indiana Jones style storytelling, where it's just like I am this sentence, and then you can just go from that sentence and just figure out what kind of character you are. It's I think it's meant to be like, it's very good to pick up and just go with, and you just have these pools that you work with, and but it has that, but again, it has that right amount of crunch to where you can tailor it to what you want so it isn't too abstract, which
Right.
I think you were talking about native, like, systems that can just be like, well, it doesn't feel like it has any weight, if that's what you're getting at.
Yeah, basically. Just it doesn't keep the that's the way my best friend puts it. He loves the feeling of being able to progress through a game and actually build something and feel like, it has that weight, as you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
That you want to be
Yeah.
able to build those skills.
Yeah, the skills. Oh, a great thing about Cypher is you just can make skills. You just make them.
That's so cool.
Huh.
I want to be able to whatever. I want to be able to, scuba dive.
Mm-hmm. Like what you want to, like what you have is like what your classes are, and I'm sorry, not your classes, what your descriptors and foci and focuses are. Just kind of describe generic, like they recommend like you could put in a specific skill you want, but some of them are just like, you are good at this one skill, and then it doesn't say what that skill is, and you get to decide what that skill is based on what you want your character to be. Like, I literally made like a character who was like, who took like basically the skills were built around like a space pilot, like a Poe Dameron sort of pilot.
Cool.
But I easily, like, just the wording was so broad that it just didn't affect it, that I just made him into a baby driver in like, Neo Tokyo. And I just made him like, instead of a pilot, he was a getaway driver. And instead of being good at, piloting starships, he's really good at driving fast cars. And it changed nothing. It was just, boom, you did it. Good job. It's really built. It's kind of a GM's paradise, because the GM, first of all, the GM just doesn't have to do anything except assign a difficulty number. And then the players get to stay focused, because they're always rolling dice, whether they're attacking, doing skills, or defending themselves. And also, I'm curious what you thought about this, Chris, but you had the resource management.
Mm-hmm.
Of the different dice and the different pools, and when you got hit, those pools went down. So not only were you losing numbers in your pool from getting hit, but you were also losing numbers in your pool from doing special abilities. What did you think about that as a player?
I don't know that I processed that yet. I mean, it is, it's a one shot, and it did feel. I think it made me feel a little nervous to overdo things. Like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna run out of the pool. But I wasn't quite. It was just crunchy enough. I wasn't quite grasping it. I know one of the other players was like picking up on it super fast. And I was still needing some hand holding by the time we were done. So I'm not sure that I really, processed that entirely, but I know it kind of did put a little pressure on of like, I want to run, run out before.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was.
And that's where you
actually,
and that's kind of the fun part of, like, I'd say it's fun, but some people can like say no, it's not really. It's kind of a bit stressful, but I'd say it's sort of that fun stress of like, do I want to use this now or later?
Right.
Plus, there were plenty of chances, I think. Hopefully, I mean, I can't tell from the player's perspective all the time, but like, where you had like, you could use the XP you got from like intrusions to use to spend, instead of like, say, spending your pools to like lower the difficulty for things. And again, you had your skills that would just lower the difficulty automatically if you were just like, oh, I'm really good at pickpocketing, and you have to get into a secret tunnel, and that just lowers the difficulty by 1. It's just it's that simple, but
it's super handy. I think it really
supple
lends
but solid
to more role playing. I think I could see it like bringing out more actual role playing and thinking about how am I going to make things work? How can I do this narratively? And as opposed to just it's all about, you know, the role. I feel like it brings a little more narrative to it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
It sounds like a great system to be able to use to emulate, like almost, I want to say like TV show casts. Like as
Yeah.
I'm kind of hearing this, I keep on thinking to myself, I was like, there's a character I've been wanting to try, which is in the Journey to the West, Sun Wukong, not the obviously the main character, but a very interesting fighter that can shapeshift, and he's like a monkey
The Monkey King?
god, yeah, Monkey
The, mon-
King.
the Monkey King?
But now he's a
Oh
god.
my
I don't
God.
know. I'm kind of like studying the story because of my philosophy class, or kind of like reading about that. I'm like, holy crap, I could actually build that in there because it wouldn't be that hard. A tough
Mm.
Monkey King that can shapeshift. It's like, that would
Yeah.
work.
I mean, I know just jumping off from the system that there is a tier where you just you have shapeshifting powers, and you can shapeshift into like bigger and badder things as you level up, and it's awesome. So yeah, you could totally do that. And if you can't find the specific like tiers of what you want, you can easily just take one that's close enough and just rework it. Like it's so broad, you can just change what you want instead of like saying this class allows me to be good at like again like with the starfighting, again with the driver, instead of like being good at piloting, I was good at driving, and it changed nothing, and it was simple, quick. And I think I've kind of harped on a little bit about like the simple yet, you know, effective crunch, but it's really a system that gets out of the way of the storytelling. And I think Chris, we I think we did a lot more just descriptions of what was going on in the game than, you know, than just actually rolling dice, rather than like say like a normal D&D game, or
Right.
or oh, God forbid, like Vampire the Masquerade, where you're literally rolling how you role play.
Constantly. You know, and I was going to say that earlier too when you were talking about the rolling, because you know, sometimes in D&D, I like D&D, but sometimes I feel like we're just constantly rolling.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta roll this. Oh, I wanted you to roll this too. And now you gotta roll that too. It's like, really? Can't we just roll this into one roll? Like, do I really need to do a skill check to climb on this thing, and then a skill check to stay on this thing, and then a skill check to see if I can shoot while I'm on this thing? Come on.
Yeah.
So sometimes, because that really does get in the way of the narrative sometimes, where you just feel like now you're getting bogged down in mechanics and you're not really progressing with what's going on with the story anymore because you're too busy rolling dice
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, doing all that math. And I like to roll dice. I love to roll like big pools of dice. That's like one of my favorite things, but I don't want to roll every 3 seconds. I like
Mm-hmm.
a balance between rolling stuff. When I roll, I want to roll a lot, but
Yeah.
and get to do fun stuff because of what I rolled. But I also, you know, don't want to be, like I said, I don't want to roll every 3 seconds. I want to be able to really grow with the story, you know.
Yeah. I mean, like in the session we did, obviously I think it was a little bit dominated by some rolling because we had 2 like large combat sessions in there.
It was great.
Yeah, but like in between that, like in between the combat at the beginning and the end, I don't think we rolled like more than 5 times.
Yeah, there was a long stretches of just role playing things and interacting. And I actually felt a little bad because we had some opportunities where we could have done more. And I don't know, we weren't in the groove that morning or something. Because
Well, you definitely got in the groove when you all turned into rats and infiltrated the Rat Kingdom. That was when it really got going.
It was like so cool. It was a brilliant idea, and it kind of pushed us to, okay, you guys, stop being so shy. You gotta pull, you know, sell this. And so that was actually really great. I think it was the best thing for this session because
Oh yeah,
it kind of got us finally really role playing.
gave you all that the gleam, gleam in your eye clicked, and you're like, oh my god, we're goofing off, and all these bad guys are like really dumb, and it's really funny.
Which is hilarious. That was hilarious in itself. And Yeah, that whole scene, like it was so it was just really easy to that's your storytelling, but it was so easy to kind of envision, you know, what was going on and where we were. And it did, I think we pushed it a little out of the Saturday morning cartoon realm, but it still had that, it had that feel to it, and you could see it, it would very easily have fit in with,
Yeah.
you know, like a Rats and Nim, you know, Secret
Yeah.
and Nim kind of movie or something. It was awesome.
A hard PG Don Bluth kind of vibe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which is, you know, I love that.
It's great. So, yeah. So, thinking about as a new somebody who was new to that system, running it for the first time, do you have any tips for any other GMs who might be delving into Cypher for the first time?
Read the book. I mean, that's just general for any new system. Just read it over, and then realize. I think the big thing would be to realize, like, the system is designed to get out of the way of your storytelling. So, in the game we ran, I'm sure I probably forgot like half of the rules on certain things, but the core of what it is, of that, you know, that simple skill, that simple, like, you know, 1 to 10 rule, just carried us through. And I think one of the big things you could learn from it is it's it's really simple once you've learned everything, and then don't be afraid to set it aside and let the story take over. And you can change the system to however you want. That's what they want you to do. And don't be afraid to just go crazy, because like the classes are broad enough, and you just have if you just assign a simple number, you can make whatever you want in the world. And I think it's really built to make you as a game master not be afraid of trying to fit your story into your system. So that I think that's the big thing you'd want to look into and remember when going forward with this.
You know, and I can say honestly, you were, you know, you told us that it was new to you. I completely forgot by the time the game was over that you were new to the system. I mean, you know, maybe there's people out there who know it well enough to cut things that weren't right. But boy, there was, I mean, there wasn't a moment that I felt like, oh, he doesn't know what he's doing, or oh, that's right, he said he's new. You know, there wasn't ever a moment that you didn't seem like you knew absolutely what you were doing. And I think that's like the bottom. You know, anytime you can just tell your story and do what you just said, you know, nobody's
Yeah.
the difference unless they're a rules lawyer, right?
Yeah, I mean,
So,
personally, like, well, I don't really know what I'm doing all the time anyway. But I think the main thing about, and this is just a larger philosophy on games in general, it's like it doesn't matter how well you did the rules. If your players had fun and they thank you for the experience, you did good. You win. You win at Dungeons and Dragons. You win at role playing. You win. That's how you win in role playing. That's the goal. Just having fun. And yeah, and it seemed like you guys had a lot of fun just like doing all this wacky and crazy stuff. And I think there was a moment where the guy playing the David Bowie character was just like, I want to make myself into a living disco ball and blind everyone. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure, go ahead, and that'll be a hard thing to do, but go ahead and see if you beat it. And he did it.
he did.
And it made for a wonderful labyrinth-esque moment.
That was that was awesome. It
So,
really
yeah.
was. So actually, and this is a good time then to ask, you know, another tip question. What about players? What would you advise for players going into this game for the first time?
You can probably make your concept for what you want with what's provided. I know they recently there's like tons of options in just the generic rulebook, which is also great because the rulebook is one of those rulebooks where everything is provided just in one book instead of like 3 books. You know what I'm saying? But they also just came out with a new book, Expanded Worlds, where they have a myriad more of character options. So the basic thing is like the wording is broad enough to where if it fits in the world of what your game master is telling, you can probably make it. You could make Star Fox. You can you can make your you can make a Super Saiyan. You can make your anime weeaboo character or whatever, and where that would be harder in say like a more standardized system like Dungeons and Dragons or Starfinder or Pathfinder. It's you just take the closest descriptor of what you want, and then if it isn't exactly what you want, you can just change it. You can just fit it to what you want, and it's literally built to be a system that says, sure, you can do that. Now let's get on with the story. It gets out of the way in the best way.
Definitely don't be afraid to ask your DM for, or let's say even called in Cypher, it's probably GM. Definitely don't be afraid to ask them if you have an idea.
I mean, you were not afraid to say, hey, how do I do this? What if I did this? And I was like, yeah, you can do that. And you're I think a lot of our like I'm sure there's like an entire text stream of you just being like, well, how do I do this? Oh, you just do this really simple thing. Oh, okay, what about this? And I was like, well, you just add that, you just put that number there. And you're just like, that's it?
So easy. Yeah, it's funny because I think I partially was struggling a little with that just because I kept expecting it to be harder than it was, and then it turned out to be really easy.
You had a bit of a system shock, if you will.
A little bit. Well, and I always have a tough time. I will admit, I have a tough time when I'm working from a PDF. Like,
yeah,
some people are really into the electronic thing. I want to open a book and work on it and have my sheet at the same time. And I don't mind some digital, but I do have a tough time with reading things on the computer for some reason. So
yeah, no.
Books
will always be better than PDF because it's just there. You have it.
Yeah. And I don't know. There's just something satisfying. Like if you saw my dining room table right now, it's just covered with books, with notepads and
books are great.
And things I'm messing with, and now this table behind me too. So
I
gaming all over the house.
Yeah, see, I'm a poor college kid right now, so I have to use PDFs. Is my thing.
That's the thing. PDFs are definitely more affordable, and I don't know. I don't know if you saw the episode that we did with Josh, where he went to work. His employer is okay with him printing that stuff out, so he has this monster stack now of PDFs that he printed. So
goodness, I mean, if I didn't have a budget on my college printing, I would love to do it. I'm sure down the line I would definitely like get this book because it seems like an investment I could do for a long time. I could, because like my mind is swimming with ideas of what I want to do with this system. I already have an idea for a sci-fi space opera game. I could also, I could do more pixie stuff. I could, I could do, I could do just regular animals. You guys are animals, or I could do a horror game. I mean, I am down the line, and I'll add a little plug here for my channel, but I am going to be doing a series of one-shots where I will be running a game based around each of the different genres that have been presented in the story, in the rule book. And so I have dystopian sci-fi, I have period piece horror, I have spy thriller modern, Planet of the Apes fantasy. I have everything. You can do what you want.
That's great. That's a great idea too, because then people can see the system, how well it works from genre to genre. and
Mhm.
how seamless it would be. I assume it will be seamless.
Hopefully. Oh
I'll
my
be
God, I
looking
hope
forward
so.
to watching that. Definitely.
Yeah.
Nate,
I
you got
couldn't.
more questions for Jackson?
Yeah.
Sorry, you were going to say something.
I'm fine for now. 'Cause
Yeah.
I haven't played in it yet. So actually, I haven't really played in any other system except for D&D. So soon I'm going to be trying Genesis.
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 Tomorrow night.
Yeah. Yep.
Mess-
Tomorrow night.
Gonna do a whole like one shot or anything, but yeah. I'm gonna introduce you.
Nice, nice.
So
I have definitely been interested in that too.
That's gonna be. I'm definitely. I don't know. Now that I've heard all this about Cypher System, here I am again with, oh, is this another system I need to get? But I think Genesis is going to be my main system going forward. But we'll see. We'll see how.
Awesome.
It goes.
Yeah.
we'll see.
I mean, I'll just jump from system to system. Like I love Cipher, but I'll always love Pathfinder, and I'll always love D&D. It's in my heart. It's in my blood to run that game. And plus, it's the game for new players. That's the game you just bring them in. That's what you reel them in with, and then you'd say, "Hey, have you tried Cipher? Or would you like to try Fate Core? Would you like to try Edge of the Empire? Yeah.
Make
I'll
sure.
try anything at least once."
So there's so many systems out there, and so many reasons to try them. For me, at least, and that's kind of why we have this series on system exploration, is because I cannot contain myself to one. But I think as far as running, I'm just hitting a point. Well, fifth, I'm comfortable running fifth, and I'm gonna probably run more of that too. But I'm definitely like, man, the last couple sessions of fifth edition that I played in, I sat there thinking, wow, if we were playing this in Genesis, we could have done XYZ. And it's not because I want to put down fifth, but I just find myself now wanting to expand and be a little less
I always say
restricted, I guess.
Like Dungeons and Dragons is an excellent bedrock, and it's excellent for what it does. But there's more stories to tell than just fantasy. And there are other ways to tell it. And I think the point of it is, like, whatever system you're playing, you're sitting down and you're having fun and you're telling a story with friends, and that's the main point. And regardless of how you get there, I mean, I'm showing off Cipher right now, but there's like tons. And as long as you could be playing with like a freaking like a dime, just flipping a dime. And as long as you're having fun, that's the point, So yeah, I'm just like all for having fun and creating new worlds. And Cypher seems like a great way for me to do a lot of different ideas without having to worry about buying and learning an entirely new system built for like one specific type of story.
Right. And maybe not having to go into complicated world building to support what you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, I made the Pixie world up like in a day. You're in a forest. There's a queen. There's rats. That's it.
It was great. It was just great. Well, I think that about wraps this episode up. It went way longer than I thought it would, but that's fine.
Yeah, it's probably sorry for the excitable ramblings I can do.
Oh, no apologies needed at all. That's awesome. So I hope people will tune into your channel. And again, it's Creative Storm Gaming.
Yes, Creative Storm Gaming.
Find him on YouTube, guys. Go check him out. Jackson's got, as you can tell, he's got a great on-camera personality. He's got a great broadcasting voice, and he runs a fun game. So check out his games. Look for his interest posts. I know I'll be watching for that spy game.
Oh.
Probably a couple other genres.
Well, yeah. It's gonna be Gonzo. It's gonna be nuts, and it's either gonna work great or it's gonna crash and burn. But by God, if it crashes, it's gonna burn gloriously.
It'll be hilariously fun regardless. I'm sure.
Oh yeah, let's hope. I can embarrass myself on air for you people at home.
For your entertainment.
That's right.
Yes. But yeah, thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
You bet. We need to do this again for sure.
Yeah, it's nice talking to you and meeting you.
Yeah, pleasure meeting you, dude.
And guys, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it the thumbs up and comment below. We'd love to hear what are your thoughts on the Cypher system and any other systems that you are exploring. And until next time,
Get out there, get gaming. Yeah, I picked it
bye,
up that
everybody.
time.